everyone. Welcome. My name is Abbie Strabala, and I'm an investor at True Wealth Ventures, which does seed stage investing in women's health. So I hope you have your beverage, get cozy. And I'm just kind of going to chat and share my story about how I got into venture, how I found out what I was doing, and kind of where my passion and vision for the future around women-led companies and female investors really started. So I started my career actually working in nonprofits, shockingly enough, which are very similar to the startup world in the sense of you're bootstrapped, limited resources, have a lot to get done, and really mission aligned. So I started working in nonprofits in the LGBTQ space here in San Francisco and really noticed that there was just such a lack of innovation and lack of kind of the startup and tech and innovative things that I was seeing in the startup side here in the Bay. And nonprofits were just so far behind. So I was really struggling with how do you make impact? How do you have vision and execution in a time manner that is fast and reactive? So I got, and as part of that, I got really interested into reproductive health. This was 2016, so at a time when politics and legislation was rapidly changing, much in the way that it is today around reproductive health and rights. And just kind of was looking for something new, something innovative to do with my time, and to really dedicate my career towards, coming from nonprofits, and found the reproductive health space. And whenever I initially was looking for jobs, I was interested in impact investing and found this space of wide open possibility. Maternal health in the US, we rank 56th, which is the worst out of any developed nation. We have really poor access and contraceptive deserts throughout the US, which means people aren't getting access to high quality care. And essentially just there was a really big lack of pull through from the innovation that we were seeing and actual delivery of healthcare. So I decided that I was really interested in that space and got my first job working at RH Capital, which does early stage investment in maternal health and contraceptive and women's health more broadly, which recently closed their second fund, which was incredibly exciting. So, I was getting this exposure and seeing this wide open space in women's health. No one was doing it. FemTech was an up and coming term. There wasn't a lot of proof points or data points. No one had a really explicit thesis on this, which was a unique position to be in really early in my career, of seeing this revolution happening in terms of female entrepreneurs getting involved and in terms of women taking control and saying, I want better solutions for my own health. My healthcare costs much more and I get poorer outcomes, and I'm the primary decision maker when it comes to health decisions. So women were just being really left out of the healthcare conversation. So I was really committed to figuring out how do you increase that. And as I started investing, learning about VC as an asset class, I noticed that there weren't a lot of women and female investors in the room. I was fortunate enough to be on an all-female team, and I remember founders coming to us and saying, gosh, it's so nice to be around women or to talk to women about this because I'm working in maternal health and I don't have to explain, fundamentals about postpartum depression to a group of men who've never experienced it. There was this connectivity that just organically came to be when you had women on the other side of the table. So as I'm continuing to invest, noticing that there's just not a lot of female investors and just a lot of frustration around the fact that, women are 2 times more likely to start a company than men, and yet they struggle to receive funding. They only receive slightly less than 2% of VC funding. And it was just so frustrating as an investor looking at these companies and knowing that so many of them are going to struggle because of the fact that they're women. So, to me, I took that as making this my personal mission to really find, invest, and support innovation that will help unlock the economic potential of women. And that is how I found True Wealth Ventures, which is where I am currently an associate. And we do seed stage investing in women-led companies. And by women-led, I mean the women have the same equity ownership on the cap table as a co-founder, and solutions that are really improving human or environmental health. So less on like the heavily FDA regulated space and more on the consumer space on how do you involve, how do you make decisions that are more important to you and hold your values mission. And I think being on this side, I've been in venture for almost 5 years now, and just seen this drastic change over time in terms of women's involvement and participation at every step. So for me, that is incredibly exciting, but also not happening fast enough. So, which brings me to talks like this and the opportunity to talk to young people such as yourself, to really help show you and demonstrate that there is this whole opportunity and career option that, growing up, I had no idea existed, but is actually really incredible and powerful. So I wanted to just talk about a few other things that I've kind of experienced, tips, tricks, recommendations that I learned along the way, in the hopes that it makes it more easier for the next generation to go forward and to get involved in this. So a big one, I think, just kind of overall, is the importance of building the relationship before you need something from someone. This was something that a mentor had told me really early on, when I was fresh out of college and thinking about VC as an asset class. It is a network game. It is, who do you know, who do they know, and how can you get a warm intro, as much as we try to fight those things. So what I learned is, build your network, build your pipeline, talk to people, and talk to them before you need them. Start working on cultivating those relationships, demonstrating potential value adds, sending things, if you're an entrepreneur, sending deals to VCs that you think might be of interest, based on their investment thesis, or a report or an article that you read, kind of doing anything to really start building that relationship, because then when you do eventually need to go and ask for money, there's history, there's proof points and data points that someone can point to and say, oh yeah, like over the years, this person has demonstrated, their ambition, their goals, their milestones, how they've achieved them. And it just kind of helps keep that in. And then, being a woman, I think, in a male-dominated field is challenging, and it continues to be challenging. I was at a happy hour earlier this week, and it was primarily men, and it was 2022. This was San Francisco in November, and it was still primarily men. So I think finding ways to get yourself comfortable, and a lot of it, I think, comes from your own self-confidence and ability to walk into that room and talk to men about things like male contraceptive options or maternal health. So I wish I had better advice on how you show up in a male-dominated field, but you really just kind of got to roll with it and not take anything too personally. You just have to show up and be yourself. And that works for some people, that doesn't work for a lot of people. And of course, there's always like looking to the future, and I remain incredibly bullish and excited about female participation on every level. And, looking at, there are female-led startups, they only receive 2% of the funding, but that's much better than it was 10 years ago. So it is slow, but it is on an upward trajectory. The same thing with female participation in check writing positions and at VC firms. We hit 15% this year, which is outstanding, relative to historic measures of change and female participation in the VC ecosystem. And we're also noticing this really big transition of generational wealth happening, where women are set to inherit roughly $21 trillion of assets over the next 10 years. And I think that will help drive, capital really helps thrive this, especially in the VC economy. So I think as you have larger participation of women on the LP level who are investing in fund managers, who then are able to go and invest into early stage entrepreneurs and startups, that will really help change the landscape. And I think like consumer trends and behavior and how women just approach investing, will really impact and shape the next 10 years. In addition to all the innovation that's happening now, the research and attention that things like women's health or women conditions, and just how cardiovascular diseases show up differently in women than men, looking beyond just women's reproductive health. And I think the future is bright and shiny, and I remain incredibly committed to helping advance venture capital, women's participation, and solutions that are going to serve women. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your conference. This was incredible, so thank you so much for having me, and feel free to reach out with any comments, questions, or follow-up.